In Episode 10, titled Select Appropriate Security Baselines, we connect the logic of classification to the structure of controls so authorization work starts on solid ground. Every control baseline under the Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, or FedRAMP, reflects a different level of potential harm established through the FIPS 199 triad. Choosing the right one is not a matter of convenience or optimism. It is a statement about how much protection the system must provide given the data it holds and the missions it supports. A well-chosen baseline prevents both over-engineering and under-protection, giving teams a proportional security framework that scales realistically. This episode shows how to tie the classification decision to a specific baseline, evaluate special cases, such as FedRAMP Tailored, and confirm that the chosen set of controls fits both your service model and your roadmap. The link between FIPS 199 impact levels and the FedRAMP control baselines is direct. A system rated low across confidentiality, integrity, and availability aligns with the low baseline. One rated moderate on any category uses the moderate baseline, and one rated high aligns with the high baseline. These baselines are essentially collections of NIST 800-53 curated for cloud contexts and tiered by required rigor. The distinction lies not only in the number of controls, but in their depth and assessment frequency. Low emphasizes foundational hygiene. Moderate introduces layered safeguards and stronger auditability, and high demands defense in depth and comprehensive monitoring. Selecting a baseline signals to assessors how thorough your evidence will be, and it signals to your own team how much operational discipline must exist to stay compliant over time. FedRAMP Tailored occupies a unique niche for low-risk software-as-a-service offerings that handle publicly releasable data. It provides a streamlined path with a reduced control set designed for services whose compromise would cause minimal mission harm. Eligibility hinges on objective criteria: no storage or transmission of sensitive data, minimal integration with agency systems, and limited potential for misuse. When those conditions are met, the tailored baseline saves effort without sacrificing integrity, because controls focus tightly on identity management, secure configuration, and continuous patching. However, tailored is not a shortcut to be assumed. Teams must verify eligibility with the Program Management Office, document why the product qualifies, and confirm that no customer will later require a higher level. If sensitivity or integration depth grows, moving back to the full low or moderate baseline becomes necessary. For most providers, the moderate baseline is the default terrain. A moderate software-as-a-service, or SaaS, product protecting citizen records, internal operations data, or financial transactions generally selects this baseline and then applies targeted enhancements derived from risk assessments or agency expectations. Enhancements might include tighter cryptographic key handling, stricter multi-factor authentication, or expanded logging retention. The baseline offers a common floor, not a ceiling. Agencies appreciate providers who start from the published moderate catalog and then explain why certain additional controls strengthen mission assurance. This balanced approach aligns with both policy and practicality, robust without extravagance, flexible without compromise. One pitfall appears when teams underselect controls or argue for the lowest baseline possible, assuming that smaller means simpler. Underselection rarely saves effort. It simply defers friction to later phases when stakeholders notice gaps between policy expectations and implementation. Reviewers and authorizing officials will always ask whether the selected baseline genuinely covers the declared data sensitivity and mission impact. If your documentation feels stretched to justify a higher level, you have probably chosen the wrong one. The better posture is conservative transparency. Pick the level your classification justifies, acknowledge where inherited controls ease the burden, and commit to measured evidence delivery. A solid baseline earns credibility, which shortens every later negotiation. A quick win is to compare baseline deltas against current capabilities early, before design hardens. Use a simple spreadsheet or control mapping tool to mark each requirement as already met, partially met, or gap. By confronting the delta when resources are still flexible, you can plan improvements across sprints rather than scrambling before assessment. This exercise also reveals natural synergies. An endpoint management platform may already satisfy several configuration controls. An identity service may fulfill access management requirements across multiple families. Knowing these overlaps lets you present reuse confidently to assessors and avoid redundant work. Early delta mapping is low-cost intelligence that converts uncertainty into planning data. A scenario illustrates how baselines flex in context. Suppose a payment processing module sits inside an otherwise routine moderate-level service. The presence of cardholder or financial data introduces higher confidentiality and integrity risk, which may demand additional encryption strength, stricter key management, and more detailed transaction logging. Rather than escalating the entire system to high, you can apply targeted enhancements to the moderate baseline, documented in your control summary and justified by risk. The principle is proportionality. Raise control depth where the data dictates, not indiscriminately across unrelated components. This focused tailoring communicates to reviewers that you understand both policy intent and engineering reality. Keep the memory anchor close. Classify first, then baseline, then tailor. Classification drives the baseline. The baseline sets expectations. Tailoring fine-tunes reality. Reversing the order, starting with a baseline because it feels familiar, then adjusting classification to fit, creates brittle logic and weakens trust. When every decision traces backward to the FIPS 199 harm analysis, your package reads as coherent. That coherence is what authorizing officials notice when comparing submissions that look similar on paper but differ in reasoning. A consistent story from impact to control selection is your best advertisement of maturity. A quick mini-review helps fix the decision in memory. State aloud the chosen baseline, any planned exceptions or enhancements, and how inherited control coverage will reduce local implementation. For instance, we selected the moderate baseline with added key management rigor. Encryption at rest is inherited from the platform's authorized infrastructure. Hearing this summary out loud ensures that all stakeholders, from product managers to assessors, share the same understanding. When silence follows, you have consensus. When disagreement surfaces, it appears early enough to fix without cost. Rehearsing the summary until it sounds natural also prepares you for assessment interviews where succinct articulation earns confidence. Baseline selection produces a defined evidence set, a decision memo, a control mapping, and stakeholder acknowledgments. The memo records rationale tied to classification results. The mapping shows how inherited and implemented controls satisfied baseline requirements, and the acknowledgments confirm that engineering, operations, and sponsoring agencies accept the level and its implications. These artifacts matter because they transform a team preference into an institutional commitment. When a reviewer asks who approved the baseline, you can show a signed, dated record. When a new stakeholder joins months later, they can see how today's configuration connects back to a traceable choice. Evidence is what turns a decision into governance. Good teams align baseline selection with the product roadmap, so control maturity grows in step with capability expansion. If the system begins at moderate, with several controls marked as planned, schedule those enhancements over coming releases and record each milestone. Roadmap alignment shows foresight. You understand not only what controls exist now, but how they will reach full maturity. It also reassures assessors that the security program is sustainable, not a one-time compliance surge. Baselines are living frameworks. Aligning them with product evolution keeps the authorization fresh and credible. Compatibility with third-party assessment organization, or 3PAO, testing methods is another checkpoint. Confirm that the scope you present and the evidence you plan to deliver align with how the assessor tests controls at the chosen level. A mismatch, using high-level documentation patterns for a moderate assessment or vice versa, creates confusion and delays. Discuss testing boundaries, sampling methods, and evidence formats early so no surprises appear when the assessment window opens. Harmonizing scope with 3PAO expectations ensures efficiency and reduces rework across the testing cycle. Because systems evolve, reconfirm your baseline whenever the authorization boundary or data classification changes. Adding new data types, integrating external services, or expanding regions can shift impact assumptions and therefore the appropriate baseline. A simple change management trigger, if classification or boundary changes, review baseline, keeps the security narrative accurate. Adjustments rarely require a full restart. They require an updated decision memo and acknowledgement that the environment has grown in sensitivity or scale. Keeping this reflex alive prevents the drift that leads to audit surprises years later. We close by returning to the purpose: fit. A correct baseline fits your data sensitivity, your architecture, and your operational maturity. Too low invites risk, too high strains resources. Just right supports control strength without waste. Confirm that fit with your stakeholders, lock the decision in writing, and share a brief baseline selection note that ties together classification results, rationale, and expected evidence. When every team member can name the baseline and explain why it was chosen, your authorization package gains both efficiency and credibility. Your next action is straightforward. Finalize the baseline decision memo, publish it to your documentation repository, and use it as the compass for every subsequent control discussion. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.